Before we jump into today's episode, I want to give a huge shout out to Nicole at the Black Box Music Venue and her team in Denver, Colorado for hosting this special episode with Opiuo. Once again, if you're ever in Denver, go check out the Black Box. It's a great venue with an amazing sound system and people. It's a great community. So yeah, once again, thank you to them for hosting this episode in their studio.
We have 14 hours of record time, so if you think that's long enough.
Definitely got some things I need to do within 14 hours.
No, me too.
Children will be standing at the edge of the school. Daddy.
You should have just brought them. They could just run around.
Yeah.
You teach them about live. Are they playing instruments yet or anything?
I mean, Amali, who's 11 now, she tried piano for a bit, but I don't know if the teacher was really up her alley, so she kind of stopped. She likes the idea of it. I think she might again. Tyler's 5 now, and she is doing singing lessons soon.
Okay.
She just sings all day long, and I think she'll be probably someone that whatever we put in front of her, she'll just go into it.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get one of those little, I forget the name, but they're like a synthesizer for a kid.
Oh, that's cool.
They actually make great sounds. And
a mini Moog?
Yeah, totally. But it's cool. They're really tactile, hands-on, and they make great sounds. You can really go quite far into them.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I think they appreciate music, and they always say that they want to go to my gigs, and they recognize my music, and they've given me feedback. I don't know if it's real or not. Just they want to have their opinion and stuff. But it's great.
I saw that Instagram video of your daughter being like, "No, Dad, it should be better."
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was because, in a way, it's probably the best feedback. If a kid's sitting there going, they've got no reference point, and
they're just very honest, brutally honest. So that is a great way to get feedback for free. Yeah. Maybe I should have some kids to help with my music.
That's the only reason. Yeah.
My dog, he's got great hearing, so he helps me sometimes too.
When he runs away, so you just go change it.
Yeah, he really helps me in that 30K range up there, if it's too bright.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, dude, thanks for joining the podcast, man.
Sure.
I was at your Real Work show. Was that last week? With
the weekend just gone, yeah.
Ashes and some other people. It was really dope. The production was something new that you did for the first time. That was pretty wild. So I'll just show like a video of it on the screen if anybody's watching the screen for the next couple seconds. But yeah, like how involved were you with the production on that, or did you get some help? I know you perform in live, and we could talk some about that later.
Sure. But honestly, I did all of it. I have a team that helps me in various ways, and they're really integral to bouncing ideas, or there's some technical things that I haven't had my hand in yet, that once the idea comes about, and then I'll learn it with them, or they'll know it and teach me, and I just love knowing how it all works. So yeah, we had a meeting one time, and one of my managers was like, with this bouncing ideas of different ways to expand sound visually, and step away from a big video wall, because sometimes it's the potential is maximized. I mean, the video content's just getting more and more nuts, which is amazing.
It's wild.
Sometimes I feel myself, I almost get completely taken in by this wall, and I sort of forget the music, whereas I want this tactile kind of reality. And it wasn't necessarily to step away from that. It was more just like, what are other cool things? Had the idea, and then basically I got on SketchUp, did a design to the exact stage size, and met with Brown Note to figure out how the processes and what we need to be sending it.
Yeah.
One of my team helped by building a capture file so I could see what I'm doing content wise, and then I went and made content. I had a friend, Sasha, who's based in Slovenia, who we've worked along the way, help send little parts of things that I would grab and turn into it, but it actually ended up being the simplest content looked the best. So It was like just singular lines that I'd make, and After Effects and Premiere, and all the way through to literally building it, angling it. I went to all the tests and everything, because it's kind of like your baby. I don't know how people do that, really just give it away to someone else to do, and have to have someone else interpret your mind. I'd rather take it as far as I can until I can't.
Yeah, that makes sense. Having that level of control is nice, because you're very technical with what you do, so I'm sure it gives you some more flexibility in pushing the limits in that way.
Well, I know what. It's almost like just the beginning, it really feels like just the beginning, because I know what it takes to get to there. And for me, that's just like, I'm like, okay, sweet. Well, it can go anywhere now, and I'm excited by that reality, because I don't know, what are we doing this for without trying something new? And it's scary. And some of my team hate the idea that literally that day until we build it before the doors open. We don't know how it's going to go. But that stress, and it's not last minute. It's more just letting it play out, I guess, as well. Instead of, you know, things do go wrong, and I think people might know or might not know, and that's okay. It's a live show, and when you're playing live too, you hit the wrong thing, you know, and you play the wrong note, or you press the wrong button that does the wrong cue for the laser or whatever. It's not meant to happen, but it kind of keeps it real. And I think without that, I don't know if I'd enjoy it as much.
Yeah.
Somehow.
I mean, yeah, I think like sometimes getting bored with doing the same thing over and over is a good motivator.
Totally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was also going to ask, like, as far as your Red Rock show last year that you sold out, you had an orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
What was that process like, writing, or I guess rewriting a lot of your music to perform with a huge orchestra and a band like that?
Yeah, I think in the conceptual reality, you have to think about what is going to make the most impact, or what parts of the songs or sounds are going to make the most impact live. Having an orchestra at your disposal, you know, what we'd do is go through what are the best instruments within that orchestra to use. And we had different chats. I went and listened to a bunch of singular instruments and really thought, you know, like a double bass, it's just too low, it's not going to cut through. We ended up having 4 French horns. Yeah, 4 French horns, which is as many as there are in a full orchestra. Just because I love that regal, but also kind of cutting, sounds a little bit like a clarinet, goes deep. It's like, well, maybe not as smooth as a clarinet, but it just kind of has this sort of tone that's like, it's new. And then I'd just have to go into the music and really think about where would they sit. And I worked alongside a guy, Tom Hageman, who lives here in Denver, and he's awesome because I can write, you know, a bunch of MIDI that I think where's where it needs to go, or I can, cut sections up and be like, I want it to hit here, I take things out, I want it to fill this space, and we sort of bounce ideas. He'll go write things, I'll cut the things to pieces and pull things out and make a million notes. And so the actual writing of the orchestral music is his total skill, but it's a really cool collaboration of trying to make it feel as electronic as possible, but as being or as orchestral as possible, because I feel like losing one of those worlds in it is pointless.
Yeah. And you have that live recording too, if anybody wanted to listen to it.
Totally.
And it sounds really good.
Mm-hmm.
For as many inputs, I'm sure that were going on for that orchestra and for you and everything else. It's blended well.
It's funny, like another last minute thing, we weren't even going to record it. Like,
really?
We weren't not going to record it, but we just didn't really think too much about it. And then that week we were like, fuck, we need to record this because, you know, like, what if it's great? You know, it's like, it's just the last thing on my mind at that time.
Yeah.
And so my front of house guy, Matt, had a Pro Tools system set up next to him and you know, ran that in. It's pretty stable for recording. And I think I recorded the backing as well inside my Ableton session. And, you know, just, you never know. You know, I think it's like if you know, we did the first one we did 5 years before that, we like paid for a company to come in with their truck and record it and do this whole thing. And that's a pressure in itself. Got to get it right. You know, like, it's been recorded. If we're paying all this money, it's like this whole thing. And sometimes being like, let's just record it, you know, let's see what happens. Maybe that's even better, you know, because there's less of that pressure.
It'd probably save some money.
Definitely save some money. I mean, it's I think in the end as well, like, you don't really know what things cost to make. You know, it's like, it's all about knowing what you're doing for sure. Definitely. I mean, the guys who did it years ago, they were amazing. But you still have issues, you know, mics go down and lines get hum and, you know, just, you never know.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's probably one thing that maybe has contributed to your success from what I've seen is just like, you're always willing to try new things. How much improvisation do you have in your typical sets that you're playing out? Because I know you play with an Alesis drum pad. I actually perform with the same pad. I love that thing.
Totally.
It's like the Pro Strike,
something like that.
Whatever.
Strike, something.
Yeah, and then the APC 40 Mach 2. Rest in peace.
Yeah,
well, unfortunately.
So my one, just a couple of the lights are going. I'm like, what? What are we gonna do?
Dude, a lot of people are pissed about. I have students and people hitting me up all the time, like, where can I get one? I was like, dude, I don't even know.
Yeah, imagine how much they're worth new now.
Right?
If at all. It's like crazy.
Somebody's listening out there who knows what they're doing. Just make a better one. You know.
Honestly, I feel like there is a silver lining in that because that thing was so good, so solid for so long.
Yeah.
But I feel like sometimes now there's a whole part of it I'm not really using or using it probably to its full potential. There needs to be something with that notched tempo. That for me is the only thing that, like, I can probably get around it with a lot of other things, but that is just so good, and you got the shift for, you know, your halves and your tenths. It just feels like it's made for it, which it is. So
Yeah, 100%.
There's nothing quite perfect like that, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, that was the last controller that was put together with Ableton, with Akai. They collaborated on the first two. And Jesse Terry was on the podcast, and he talked about the process of that.
Right.
And then they released the APC64, which is kind of like their new remake. And I don't think it's done as well.
Is that the standalone?
It's not standalone, but it doesn't. It has the touch faders.
Okay.
Instead,
I have seen
the
that.
64 pads. Yeah. So
I'm still. I guess I'm old school too. Like, I love, if I'm going to be, especially actually, you know, when I am, depending on the show, you know, I've got so many iterations of it, from doing a DJ set using it through to not touching it except for launching scenes in a orchestral setting, because I'm taking the role of a conductor too. And I think just being able to grab something, you know, from far away, you just have to quickly, oh shit, I've done that. You know, it's like to have a touch fader and you greasy fingers. It's like,
it feels good just to grab it. You just like, you know,
just
where
make
it's
one
at.
big fader, just like
just one giant. But yeah, back to the question, like, how much improvisation do you typically do in your sets? Like,
I mean, having the live pads is great. That varies totally. I have channels where it's basically that sound on a channel that I can turn up and down. If the pads are gone, whatever's happened, you know, anything can happen in that moment that you can't play that sound. But it's cool too, because you can play the bass line, you know, a typical one I do every show. Maybe Sneakers is a song where it's like really fun to play this thing, but I do have it on a channel that I could turn it back up and it's there. And sometimes it's just looping a section and playing the drums through different parts. Or I got into a little bit of bringing the signal back into Ableton and looping it, and it was really fun, but it kind of, sometimes I could just tell no one knew what I was doing. And it was like, for me, that's one of the most important things, is if you are going to be doing something on stage, either make it obvious or do something that really either improves a song or gives you the most satisfaction as well.
True, yeah.
You know, all four people nerding out and going as deep as they want, if that's what makes you enjoyable, you know. For me, it's like, how much bigger can I make the music in a visual sense, but also in a live sense. In terms of, like, I could play whatever song I want in most of the shows, you know, whatever order I want to go. As I'm doing the video too, I have a machine with me on stage, and the typical, say, festival set, video machine's next to me. I'll be sending MIDI to it, running Resolume, triggering clips, but I also have a controller that can play the video parts if I want. And then that can also go through to having strobes on them, having laser cues on them. Yeah, it's just, and then drum machine's the same, and they can run the MIDI back into what's the Motu thing? I have Microlight, and I receive the MIDI in Ableton, and then that goes out the same channel via our network to the laser machine or whatever. So I've got to be ahead of time. I often don't have audio coming through at that time because I'm away. It's probably 200 or 300 millisecond delay from a MIDI cue on the computer to getting to the laser machine to going out. So you've got to be a bit ahead of time. It really depends. Like, some shows, there's a lot less of that because I've got so much other stuff to think about. And then some shows, it's all about that. And it kind of evolves as I go. Yeah. Musically, like, I'm at a stage right now, like literally this week in my head, I'm like, all right, I'm just really excited about making music again. I've got some time, moved overseas. That took a lot of energy. I've done a lot of big live shows, and looking forward to next year, I'm just like, all I want to do is make the music. But as I'm making it now, I have so many ways of thinking of performing it. So I can stem it out early and try it out. When I perform it as I'm testing the song, I can be much more flexible in that sense. Yeah.
So, like, maybe specifically, what stems are you usually playing in your set? I know you have this set pulled in front of us.
That's just that one up there is actually the backing computer for Red Rocks.
Okay, so these are just stems you're not controlling.
That is literally launching sessions, and I was just having it up because there's a bunch of laser cues and videos and stuff like that. So it really depends. Usually it's just one stem for the drum machines will be there, and then I kind of treat it like a DJ set in a way that I can launch different parts. But I'll have the main session and then a section where it's easy to play an edit of something or a section of something and just drop it in straight on top. So the session kind of looks a bit messy by the end of it sometimes because I've moved it around.
So do you have like locators MIDI mapped or something where you can just trigger each song? Or
Yeah, I'll just be on a scene.
Okay.
Normally, there'll be, there are normally about 6 channels. There's like a master 1 and a master 2. There's a backup, a sound from that song that can be missing or not. And then I'll have versions of the songs with it completely mixed because, I get there and the drum machines are completely done, whatever. It's like I'd kind of leave it as everything's got its full backup. Like the video machine on stage with me has Ableton in the background ready to go if I need to. And then I'd manually be doing the video on that same machine.
So you're mostly in session view, like playing scenes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. The arrange view like this is, like this Red Rock session is rarely used unless I'm not actually running what's going on.
That was a pretty unique show too.
Yeah. And it's, it depends on how deep. It's normally if you've got an orchestra relying on it to be bang on, if something misses a beat, or I miss a cue by a bar, to launch that scene, it's like you're done.
It gets weird real fast.
Yeah, and so you just keep it as, because that performance wasn't about that so much. It's not about me dropping the track, it's everything else. And if you view it like that, I think, some of the funnest things I've done recently is I did an after party after the show on Friday and played a bunch of drum bass, which I hadn't in years, and I just loaded all this drum bass that I've had and bought some more and some old school stuff, and it was just awesome. I was just playing it, but the easiest thing to do for me was because I live so much in that software for everything I do. I just, instead of doing a record box session for a day and reloading everything, I just chucked it in there, and it was really fun because it was like to be using that software in that pure fun session way again was awesome.
Yeah, it's a different type of control and improv.
Yeah, I mean, I do like. I grew up DJing and played vinyl for years, and used to fly around with a big bag of vinyl, and I loved that unsynced reality too. It's fun and it's loose in its own way.
Yeah,
it's live. I like live performance. I like a thing that has risk. I like watching people do things that I feel so much more nervous watching someone else perform than I do myself, and so I like experiencing that.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah, I think if I'm walking on stage and I don't know what's gonna, that's why I like to be involved with all the little bits. But if I don't know how one thing is working, I'll probably get a bit nervous. But if I walk on and I've been told, all right, something's not quite working with this thing, well, I can just let it go because I know that there will be a fix, or it'll be what it'll be.
Yeah. Have you seen anything about Pretty Light's new setup, like with the live band that he's been doing? Derek?
Yeah, I've seen the show a few times.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Man. Like
there's a lot of stuff up there.
He's got his decks, and he's also got his mixer, and he's just like mixing while DJing the entire band at one time.
It is like someone DJing with like, instead of just tunes, it's the players too. Yeah,
he's
great.
mixing the band live and then running all that to front of house. It's just a lot going on. It's pretty wild.
Mm-hmm. No, it definitely is.
Makes me nervous watching him.
Yeah, totally. I think the players are so amazing. And,
they are, yeah, for
and
sure.
they're all really awesome people that are probably so open to all of the options or the things wherever they're going. And I think they live and breathe that music too. So
yeah, having a good band definitely helps.
Oh yeah, it's everything.
Makes a big difference.
Yeah, even like shout out to all the people that played in the orchestra. They were just, some of them were full symphony players, and some of them had other things going on as well. And they're all up for it. It's new, it's fresh, it's different for them, and and there's lasers firing out from everywhere, and it's dark and it's kind of windy or whatever. It's, you have to be open for everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like the greater the risk, the greater reward sometimes.
Yeah. Well, sometimes for me the big risk shows, I don't feel the reward for quite some time. Like I don't know where that reward comes. It's like it's almost the journey of getting to that point and doing it. And when you're doing it, you're not even really that present because you're so wherever your head is. The reward comes months later when you can actually look at it as someone else. I think at the time when you walk off stage, everyone's had the experience, but it's all for them. If it's all for you, you probably get lost in the thing, and they might not have the experience that they you want them to have.
That's really good.
Yeah, I've learned it more and more that the bigger the show, the more risk, the less awesome I feel when I walk off stage. And not in a negative way at all. It's just I'm done. I've spent all my energy. I don't know what I'm experiencing anymore. It's like, and I can hang out with everyone, and I need that space almost. I need the quiet time to to separate those two worlds, you know. But then a few months later, I can be like, wow, we did that thing.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that perspective.
Yeah.
Well, in other news, you had your recent underground EP with Ashez, which was really cool. I enjoyed that. I feel like it was definitely a perfect mix of both of your styles. Like I could hear the influences of both of you in that EP. And sonically, it sounded great. Like the sound design, the synthesis, everything you did was really tight. Maybe talk about some of that process of working together and like what that looked like.
He just actually rang right then. That's funny.
Oh, nice. So, say hello. You can throw him in the mic if you want.
It was one of the more free-flowing, enjoyable collaboration sessions just because we became friends and there was no idea of what we were doing. You know, it's just making some stuff. And, you know, I think the last few years for me it's been a lot of moving overseas for 6 months of the year or 5 months a year or doing this and a lot of travel and kids growing and missing home. And there was like a lot of things attached to touring. And so every time I got the chance to go home and spend a month somewhere and then he came and stayed and it was fun just to like let out whatever that was right then and then go off touring again or doing whatever and then coming back and the next thing was there. You know, there was no connection to like each song being the next step, next song or whatever.
So you worked on a lot of it in person in Denver together?
We did actually work on a tiny bit in Denver last year at a house in Rhino. He came and stayed and most of it was written in Australia in my house there and some online. The first Underground actually was written mostly. He had an idea. I think he had the vocal and maybe some beat or something. It was mostly online. Back and Forth was the first thing we did. And it was like, wow, this works great. He'd just send me some sounds and I'd throw it in. And it was a lot of that kind of process in the end where I would be driving the session because he was working on Logic. So he'd make sounds. I'd send him parts. He'd work to that. It was actually really fun.
It's working with stems mostly.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because bouncing sessions backwards and forwards can be also equally as amazing and it can also go the other way where it just gets so pulled apart that when you get it back, you have to find the energy for it again because it's so new, you know. It can really be, you never know. You know, I don't think either way is better or worse. So it was really fun and it was nice to just let that kind of styles come about and let it out.
Yeah, I really enjoy working with audio and the few times I've worked with stems with other people collaborating. There's just something nice, I guess, about
you're committed.
Yeah.
And you make the most of what you've got instead of trying to pull apart whatever they give you.
Yeah.
You know?
That limitation sometimes makes you more creative.
I work in a lot of audio. I mean, I try my best to anyway because I feel I used to do a lot more. I found when I was using Logic and I'd have a Virus Polar synth and I'd be recording it in and, you know, every second time you play it, it sounds different. So you have to they just had a terrible, I think I haven't been able to use it for a long time because the software doesn't work with the new operating systems and there's a workaround, but it didn't really work very well. And so I actually still have it, but I haven't been able to use it. I mean, most of my old school sounds, a lot of them came from that synth. So it was, you know, I got trained in working with audio because you had to get, or I just put a loop on and see if I can get a good version of it. Okay, sweet, got it, you know, and then that's it. And then a ton of processing afterwards.
Yeah, well, what are some of your favorite synths? I had some questions that people like sent in, and so maybe we can go through a couple of those related to production. Yeah, favorite synths. Do you have any go-tos? It could be hardware or software.
I mean, my wife's in Australia right now, going to a wedding, and I'm gonna get her to bring back my Prophet 6.
Oh, nice. Classic.
I feel like you start with something great, you can make whatever. And it's fun being that it sounds old school, but then it has a harder edge to it. And I've got a Voyager as well, Moog, but it's monophonic, so it's just one note at a time if you need it. This is Poly, and it just feels like I've got a love. I guess being around electronic music and dance music for so long, I've got a love for some of that really old, simple lead sounds and simple, nice bass sounds, and the complexities of things are amazing. And yeah, I think it leads to that. Hardly use it anymore because it's just become.
Kind of Moog is it?
The Voyager.
Oh yeah, okay.
Gotcha. Walnut and orange.
Nice. I have a Sub 37, and that's still one of my favorite purchases I've made.
Totally.
I love that thing.
And the thing is with that, you have to be quite creative too. I mean, the sounds are great, but you've also got to be creative. And that part, I think, a lot of the time for me, I don't actually have MIDI running to a lot of things. I'll A Prophet is just the module, but and I run MIDI to that to control it. But I often just play it in, and that also being that's your version. That's what you've got. You haven't got layers of MIDI to play with. And I think that sometimes can be creatively encouraging.
For sure.
Instead of getting lost so deep into it. And then, stepping from the kind of more analog-y sound, Diva, the Yuhi Diva is it's a great kind of soft synth. I love it because it sounds great.
I've heard of it before.
Yeah.
But I haven't actually really looked at it. This thing. Oh yeah, of course. I haven't played with it, but I've definitely seen this a few times.
Yeah, I love it. It's some things in there that are just my go-to when I'm wanting something, some specific pads or warm leads. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it looks nice.
And it's simple and
pretty stable.
Totally. I've actually, I was using that for many years, actually. I totally forgot. I haven't used it for a while, but I was using that in my live sets. Is we were talking about before about playback rigs being stable. It's like a lot of the time, if I've got a keyboard on stage, is running drum racks or like samplers or things that are just really low intensity because the risk is too high for it to crash or whatever go on. Yeah. But I used to have this running, and it's pretty intensive, but it's not too crazy because there was a couple of these leads that just sounded so great. You couldn't really sample them and play them back because there was, a lot more freedom to play whatever you wanted to solo. But then, I find to have a bit of variation is, I guess not variation, a bit of risk in it is great. But sometimes I just can't afford that risk, so I sample everything and replay the sampler.
Yeah, so there's a Max for Live device, speaking of that I worked on with a guy named Toby Honka. He runs AbletonDrummer.com. I've talked about it a million times. But we put together this device for that purpose. Cool. It basically is like automatic sampling. So if you want to make sample packs or if you want to sample a synth like the Diva, you can do multi-note sampling. So multi-sampling every single note.
Every single note you play? Yeah. As you just play it?
So you throw it in a sampler, basically. Yeah. Uh-huh. And then you can sample every note that you want of the synth, add more effects to it or whatever. And then you can just play it back as a MIDI instrument in a sampler.
Right.
So that was kind of the purpose, like what you're saying, the stability of some plugins. I would never trust Omnisphere on stage.
I mean, Omnisphere is another one I love for sure, but no, there's no way I'd play that on stage. Yeah.
So I built this and resampled my favorite patches in Omnisphere so that I could play them live on like a MIDI controller.
I'd love to check it out because I just spend so much time once I, go through sample note to note, and it's like sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a bunch of banks of simple sampled sounds that are easy for me to drag in and complete the live set.
Yeah
I mean, Serum is something that is so popular and awesome for a reason. I don't use it live, but I use it a lot in the studio, and I use it a lot more on bass now that I haven't got any of my hardware here. I have the last few years bouncing around and traveling so much, I really started to use it more and more and more too. There's a few things I miss about some of my old synths and the way I'd use them. And I think for me, it's just whatever's in front of me or however I'm working at the time, I get stuck into that. And then I'll listen to a song or something will remind me and I'm like, oh my God, I just totally forgot. There's this whole other way of doing it. I don't have a million synths sitting there ready to go all the time. I always, if I reinstall the machine, I'll just put what I'm really into and some extra kind of things or something new to kind of keep my workflow better. I think for me, I will have them sitting there and I won't even use them for forever. And then it's kind of cool to come back to. And I think maybe talking about going back to making music a bit more or having more time to make music, I think I'm going to load it up with a bunch of old shit and new shit and dive in again and have those nights, I
think once you get to a certain point and experience level producing and making music for so long, you're like trying to break what you already know.
Totally.
And like do other stuff because you just get bored. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like I'm in that phase right now where I'm just kind of bored. I'm like, what else can I learn? What else is out there? What haven't I played with?
You sometimes find that like if you're bored because there is so much option, maybe you need to take all the options away and give yourself one thing and see what you can make with that one thing.
Also true.
It comes back to the idea more than this amazing piece of technology, and then if the idea is amazing, well, the technology can become even better, I think.
That's a really good point too. It's having that limitation.
I mean, it's unlimited now. I think kids growing up now with just so much amazing tools. I wonder, is it like harder to be more creative, or is it easier just to make something? Or, you know, there's AI, there's everything you can ask for. There's Splice, it's just really cool. It's like I've spliced over the years, or like, you know, but I've been lucky to be around. If I want a big horn line, I can call a friend who knows what I want and explain it over the phone and get this thing back and chop it up. And but yeah, sometimes the simplicity is key.
I do miss the cloud feature in Splice, the free cloud storage. That was a nice backup.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So it's gone. I actually didn't use it for a long time. It's gone.
Yeah, it's gone now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm using Dropbox a lot.
Which kind of makes sense. They were just giving everybody free storage. I feel like that's got to be expensive after you have like 100,000 users or something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Also, have you heard of soundbetter.com? You're talking about people you can hit up for horns or just randomly tracking instruments and stuff. It's basically like I think probably the biggest freelancing site for musicians, producers, engineers. Great. You can hit up and find anybody who's worked on a lot of like even really legit projects.
Wow. No, I haven't.
Yeah, I hired a guy to do like an orchestra intro for one of my songs, and he's worked on a bunch of Netflix films. Anybody out there, it's a great resource if you don't know somebody. Soundbetter.com, yeah.
Cool.
Do you have any favorite go-to Ableton Live stock instruments, effects? This is the Ableton Live podcast. So.
Yeah, totally. I mean, for me, it's the most stable things I use, you know, like EQ, auto filter. I mean, just for me, it's like I use that software because it is so stable and it's so simple in the way that I think of it anyway. It's endless. It's absolutely incredible how far you can go. But I think at the front, it's so simple, and that's what I love about, especially for live performance. It's all I use is the Ableton stuff. And I think production side, I think coming from other software, using Reason for years, using Logic for years, and I got really used to external things in those, and I've taken them to Ableton as well over the years.
Like VSTs and stuff?
Yeah, like, you know, from the Fab Filter bunches and different clean things. But I just think Ableton is what I like about there's a lot of internal things that have evolved as everything else has evolved, and they're putting so much energy into their stock things, you know, and then from Glue, you know, I used to use the Glue compressor, the actual Glue compressor, and now I use the one inside, you know, it's like, I guess they partnered, but just to be able to bring those things you've used as external VSTs into that software, and I just think it sounds great.
Yes, Cytomic, I think that's how you pronounce it.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, they make some really cool stuff.
Yeah, totally.
They're really legit.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and I really feel like I'm right at that stage again where I can't wait to dive into the depth of it, and I want, like, speaking of going simple, I want to go back to just having no external synths and just go and see how far I can take that. You know, normally that happens when I'm on an airplane or something, where I'm like, all right, I just want something really simple and just go in and
I'm imagining a Voyager in your lap on a plane, just like holding that thing.
It's fun. And I mean, sometimes it depends on, like, you know, when I'm touring really heavily, I'm not writing music on the road. It's just too much. I'm working on a live show the whole time. And I get back into a studio, into a room, or just a pair of headphones now. Being half deaf has made it really hard to use headphones a lot.
So I heard about that. Yeah. Maybe describe that for people who didn't know, or.
Yeah, I had it's called a radical mastoidectomy is the operation. I had a lot of them before that. So for most of my life, I was dealing with infected air. Both my ears when I was younger, and then it just went to my left. So I'd have grommets, a little tube to drain the fluid behind your eardrum. It seemed to get better, and then when I was in my late teens, early 20s, they found that there was a cyst growing behind my eardrum. I had to take my ear off, drill through the back.
Oh, wow.
Remove the cyst.
Sounds fun.
It was amazing. So, you know, I've got weird feeling in my face and my tongue. I've got crazy ringing in my ears from that very first massive operation. It's like 7 hours long.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and that really got rid of my hearing. But before then, it was pretty bad. And it got bad over the years, and that was obviously the cyst in the back. A few operations like that to get rid of it. And then I had a major one, which actually moves my eardrum. They can see straight into my middle ear because that's where it grows again. And it's because of the eustachian tube in the back of your throat getting blocked or not developing. So the air behind your eardrum gets absorbed over time, it sucks your eardrum in, and then when that touches the cavity wall, it can grow a benign cyst. So it's really intense. It can go into your brain and kill you. It's
Damn, dude. That's wild.
Yeah. So yeah, it just became probably part of my journey, and what is part of my journey, and I think drove me to do it maybe. I don't know. It was like a weird thing when it happened. I was DJing and really enjoying music and loved to go to parties. And I had a friend in a band who'd quit as a drummer. And not a close friend, but friends of friends, and they had mentioned that it changed him a lot. And because it was ringing in his ears. And it drove me to be like, this is what I love doing. I'm going to push it until I can't. Kind of rather be hard of hearing and, old and had a great life than try and find something else, It's I've got great hearing in one ear, which is lucky. But
so does that mean you mostly just mix in mono or like?
No, I guess I am.
How do you get around that?
I just move around in the room and move my head. When I'm talking to people, I move my head.
Yeah.
I'll be standing this way and someone will say something over here and I'll hear it over here because it's bounced off a wall or something. But
interesting. Well, your mixes sound great. So you're doing something
honestly,
right.
I don't feel like, sometimes I feel like maybe it's less of a blessing to have perfection. So this better sound fucking good because I've got everything, and if you don't and you think it sounds as great as you can right now, well, then that's great. It doesn't have to be perfect. And sometimes the imperfections is what makes it great. There's been one song that I don't even remember what one it was, but I remember listening to it. It was years ago. And I must have had the headphones the other way around and it had been released and the sound popped up on just one side. I was like, fuck, it got me finally.
Some hard panning going on.
Yeah, I used a spreader a lot and a bunch of phasing. When I was using Logic, there is a plugin called Spreader and you start using a bunch of phasing in a bunch of different ways to try and make things move around. I don't know. I feel like if the sounds are kind of placed right and there's enough panning or, mid-side EQing or wherever you want to use, whatever you want to do to make it feel bigger.
That's a big one, mid-side EQ. I feel like a lot of people,
totally.
At least me for a long time, I didn't even really think about it until...
I don't use it a lot. I mean, if it's the right sound, great. But it's not probably my go-to. I think finding the right sound is key and that should slot somewhere so, you can really move things around. But I think that probably I use it maybe less because I'm hard of hearing on one side.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if this is true. I'm not a doctor or scientist, but I've heard that like if somebody loses one of their senses or partial...
Yeah, that picks it up.
That all of your other senses are more heightened.
Sure.
So I wonder if maybe like your one ear is more heightened or more like aware maybe because of that,
No idea.
Possible.
I mean, I feel like hearing's a funny one too because people can, you can get a hearing test and know that you can hear those frequencies. But some people who can hear those frequencies aren't listening for those frequencies. And if you're listening for everything and trying to find the noise, or the silence in that noise or whatever it is you're looking for, your brain is looking for it, then you're going to hear it in some form. And sometimes you feel it before you know that you've heard it, and you can feel a lot of frequencies as well. And I think I hate the word sometimes, but there's an intention behind it. It's like there really is without thinking about it too much. I think the subconscious intention of making it feel a certain way is there, and I think driving that desire for it to feel a way or, I think people can hear it without, or they don't maybe know they've heard it. They feel it,
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think maybe I don't think about it too much. I didn't want to talk about it for a long time, my ear, because it was terrifying. And spent 6 months after that first operation, like with white noise on in my room because it was so loud. The ringing.
Yeah, dude.
It's just insane. But yeah, I think you just have to find what you like, within it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like what you're saying, the intention, like I think music is both conscious and subconscious of like, there's always times where you go back to a song and maybe it feels a different way or you hear new things. And like,
but it's also subjective. So whatever I make, it's up to you, what you think it makes you feel or what you think it's representing and telling people, I think sometimes too much.
Yeah.
And sometimes take it away from what it actually might become for you.
Yeah, like a bunch of my most popular songs I ended up hating and almost didn't release. And everybody else was like, this is my favorite song you made.
Honestly, the biggest ones, I think I was talking about Mr. Bill, about it. The quickest, the simplest, the things that are like almost throwaway. I wonder what that is. I wonder if there's less like pressure on it to become this thing. And sometimes you can overmix it and overproduce it. And sometimes the rawest, funnest thing, is the best.
What do you think about the concept of the muse? About like, there's something that's almost kind of this idea is passing through you. And you're really a muse for the idea rather than you're generating.
Where's the idea from then?
Everything on your own.
Oh, right. I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah, right. No idea.
I don't know how to prove it, but like.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is you don't know. I don't think you can know. Maybe you can. I personally don't think I know where my inspiration or my experience to make the thing comes from. And is there void of all influence? Would you have the ability to create what you create? like literally no influence. Like literally, that would be a test, but you'd have to raise a kid with zero fun.
Yeah.
And then put them in a room the whole life and then say, all right, do something.
The kid probably will turn out to be a serial killer or something.
Who knows? Like, I guess the thing, I find influence such a funny thing, because when people ask, what are your influences? You know, what musically or makes you write music? And it's changed so much over the years from, you know, people and places and other music to just experiences. And I think always relating it back to something else sonic is, you know, it's not always the case for me anyway. So yeah, I wonder, like, if there is, are we all just influenced by everything and each other so much so that who knows where it came from, you know? Yeah,
I think influence is a big one. Like, I find after I go to a show, sometimes I go home and write some of my favorite stuff, you know? It just happens to be that way sometimes.
Oh, it's amazing. I think that's, for me, what I will enjoy maybe long after I'm touring, is just going to shows and going to festivals and being around. I've taken our kids, you know, we've gone to festivals many times with the kids, and what a cool thing to do. It's what I did when I was little too. And yeah, it's just to experience what this all is there, like in the final thing as a kid too, you know, to maybe encourage more of this as well, you know.
Yeah.
But coming at it from that angle, from experiencing the shows and the culture and the community and whatever the thing is amazing, you know. And that's, for me, it was like I went to many shows before I decided to make music, or it's just because I loved it. It wasn't really an option.
Same. Yeah, me too.
Oh, that's fucking awesome.
So maybe we could fire through some of these last questions.
That's cool.
How do you know something is a good idea when you're making music?
I think we just touched on it. You don't.
Yeah, pretty much.
I don't think you do. I think I haven't lost the inability to be totally confident that something's done or good, you know, and I guess good is someone else's view of good, you know. Like, there's times when it was done 5 sessions ago, you know. I remember Fred again had put out a song, a drum bass track that he did, Leave Me Alone maybe or something. Yeah. And he'd made a comment when it came out that my friend sent it to me, it was like that he had done 10 versions more, and then I think his brother or someone had said to him, actually that version long ago, underproduced, is the best. It's like the vibe.
Yeah.
Having that, you know, reflection or someone to tell you that, it's probably the most amazing thing ever, because that idea is probably the best bit of it. And then you want to make it sound perfect, and you want it to have great intro and outro and everything. So I think sometimes the best moment is early on, before you've actually thought it was good.
Or overthink it.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly. Yeah, I believe that too. Quick best drum processing tips.
I mean, the perfect sound and sample for me, and then I do a lot of volume automation, transient shaping, and a bit of panning, a lot of hard EQing, really giving everything its space, like really separating it. You know, and the process for me is actually selection and arrangement, because you can have some great sounds, but put in the wrong place or feeling in the wrong place, they don't sound great to me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've gone through and actually volume automated every hit.
Really?
Yeah, just to really try and capture as much punch as I can, and I guess not overly compressing things too, because you shouldn't need to if the sounds are right, they're sitting together right, you know. Like a big actual drum kit, you've got to really get in there. And we're so lucky now we can have these sample banks. I've got a kick drum that I use, that I made many years ago, that I'll use in the background of most of my songs, and layer different tops on there. But yeah.
Cool.
Didn't really answer it, but
yeah, no, I mean, you did. You definitely did.
Sure.
I mean, sample selection, transient shaping.
Yeah.
You clip your drums as well sometimes.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll smash channels, a snare drum, or just keep. Yeah, see this. I do that a lot. I learned that from. I was always scared of doing it in digital things, but when I did a year at RMIT in Melbourne, doing technical production music, and it was more live sound, which was great. Kind of cemented my knowledge of, you know, real pieces of kit.
Yeah.
But part of it was just smashing snare drums in these big desks and just turning it right up, recording that, bouncing it, doing it again. And it really got me into this idea of just, you can't really break it, you know? So there was a lot of that. Like, yeah, I think clipping drums is the best.
It definitely, I think, helps you get some of that aggressive volume back too. Overall tips for getting your music louder and tighter. It's another question.
I mean, I produce most of the time at 0. So I try not to have to bring everything back up later. Sometimes I have to bring it back a little bit, but most of the time, no, and just have a hard limiter on there. And in a way, if it's all starting to sound like shit or not working, well, then that's probably how it's going to end up being later.
Yeah.
In some form. I mean, there's so many ways to get around that, but I think that gives you, it's kind of a good writing ethic because you are immediately faced with the problems that you might have later. And that might be a creative decision that you don't want to have to make because you love the sound and it's just not working because it's once it all comes together, it's, you know. And I think that for volume can really help because you're already nearly there and there's less reliance on someone else having to come in and put their ears on it at the mixing phase. So, you know, you're all over it yourself and then, probably less at the mastering phase too. And then that helps for volume, I think, a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I also like produce with the limiter and like push stuff right into it. It makes sense too, because if you get a sound that you get used to and you fall in love with it, and then you have all this headroom that you still have to bring up, it's going to sound different when you do bring that volume back in.
Totally. And I think, you know, that I don't actually use much, if any, metering. So
really, okay.
Weirdly, probably connected to losing an ear hearing is I hated the idea that if I was looking at something and it was telling me it was clipping, and I was hearing it and it wasn't clipping, I was like, what is the point in this thing? You know, and that came from many years ago. That was more on the desks and like hardware. Hardware is a bit more forgiving too. You can hear digital clipping and sometimes that's tastefully great. But yeah, I feel like, I mean, there's some incredible visual representation of what you're doing and nowadays. And I don't know, I feel like sometimes you can just have the channel open and clip the shit out of it.
Yeah, why not?
See what happens, you know, and that can give you volume. You know, there's a limit to probably the quality of the mix, maybe. You know, there's some really loud stuff that feels a little scooped. It's also a good test, you know, on a big PA. Like once you get stuff sounding great and it sounds great on the phone and maybe on your computer and in the studio and everything, but you put it on a fucking huge PA. I mean, they're always got a bunch of control that's on top of it anyway, but if it really sounds great, someone like there, then, you know, the volume maybe not necessarily be the problem, but the intensity and the fullness of sound is probably, you know, often comes with volume too, but yeah,
that can definitely be a real test when you play something live and you're like, oh,
totally.
I gotta fix
I mean,
that.
it really depends on how the room's tuned or
That's
it's outdoors.
true too.
I mean, but if you can get someone, often I'll go into a venue before you know, at sound check and before we're doing anything, just ask them, hey, can you just set up another channel and flatten everything? I just love to hear how it sounds, you know, and it's something that I know really well. And many times I've been like, oh, that sounds great.
Yeah.
You know, and I think finding your sound and being sort of trusting of your ears and trusting of what you feel like is loud enough, you know. I mean, it's one thing for someone DJing your song and it not coming in loud enough. But then there's another thing of like making sacrifices with the mix to get it louder, you know. Is that the focus? Who knows?
That's a really good point too, is like how loud is loud enough, you know, like in it.
But you're going to have to sacrifice something at some point. There is a limit to it. And there's certain frequencies that take up more room, you know, and will become brittle or, you know, and you're going to have to choose, you know, is the volume the focus? Like I definitely think there's a level at which you should be at. That's my taste.
Yeah.
Other people don't think so. That's fine.
Do you have like a favorite luff that you? No.
I think every song's a little different. It always comes out wherever it feels right. Sometimes I don't even look.
Yeah.
And I just A/B it with other things and it feels close.
Oh, man. Good stuff. That's a great answer. So you had your first Denver show 14 years ago. If you could time travel, what music advice would you give yourself 14 years ago? Knowing what you know now.
Yeah, I've been playing probably for 10 years before that, DJing. And I think I'll probably just tell myself to enjoy it. Like, there's so much pressure that comes with any success. And then now I have the pressure of a family, and which is a great pressure. I really enjoy it. There's probably been many times, and I've had moments, you know, in the years being where I've probably not taken in what's going on, you know, whether I was distracted or anything. But I think musically, to just enjoy like where you're at as much as you can the whole way along, because there's a definite focus on numbers and success and all these kind of things. And that sometimes you don't realize you're already in that at the time, and you're just thinking ahead. And then 10 years later, 5 years, 3 years later, you're like, fuck, that was great, you know, and you're just focused on whatever the next thing is, which is a great driving factor.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, I didn't suffer from that so much at the time. I was just really enjoying it. And I think as you grow and change, just to really focus on, you know, look what we get to do. Look at our life. You know, look, just even this, you know, we're hanging out. It's like,
yeah, enjoying the journey.
Yeah, I just think it's key, and it sounds so kind of cliche, but it really, after many years in it, it's you just need to, and that drives me, I think, to do different shows and things. Is you need to be able, I think, look back and be like, oh, I'm fucking proud of that, you know, and whatever that is, and enjoy especially that freedom early on. I think I really managed to, because I was living festival life before I was doing it, and really enjoying all that stuff as well. And I think coming from that's such a cool way, because you get to redo it in your own way. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Life's crazy.
Life is wild, man. It's a hard enough life. Oh, other question. Does your daughter write most of your music? And
she writes all of it.
Be honest.
She writes all of it.
Okay. That's kind of what I figured.
Yeah.
Upcoming projects you're working on that you can announce, or?
Can't announce anything right now. I've definitely got some things happening that are very big for me, and I feel at a really good place to be writing again as well, you know, and really going back to that old days of just sitting in the room till 5 a.m. Me for now, 2 hours later, my kids wake me up, and, you know, I try and get to sleep in if my wife's there or not, but whatever. I think those days that I'm really tired because I just stayed up all night making music, or it's super late, I feel great because I fucking did it, you know. It's like, it's awesome. I still get high on just that, you know, just making music. So yeah, there's projects coming because of that, and live things. I just keep moving.
You've got a new tour too, right? That's going to be announced soon, maybe?
Yeah, I'm doing some shows with Enzo Immersive and Of the Trees.
Nice.
It was really cool as well, like to go out on the road with some people who are doing some great things, and enjoy that as well.
They're all great.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. There's, I think also just having moved overseas and landed, and that took probably 6 months pre-moving and 6 months or 5 months, whatever it is now, of moving, setting yourselves up. So now I feel like at a bit of a landed place and can just get creative again, you know.
I feel like that takes a while after any move. That's a
Fucking
big
insane.
move too. How long is that flight from Australia?
It's like 24 hours to get here.
Damn, that's so...
Yeah, something like that. But it's just, we just bought our bags of clothes, left everything, stored it, sold it, whatever, and decided just that we didn't know we were staying. We were coming for a period of time, and then it was working with kids in school, and it was like just sort of lined up.
Yeah.
It was the ideal thing, what we wanted to do, but we didn't put any pressure on it. Yeah.
I've been in Denver for almost 3 years now, and I love it here, man.
Where did you come from?
I came from Indianapolis.
Oh, yeah,
I grew up in Ohio, but I lived in New York City for a little while.
Sweet. Yeah, nice.
Went to Dubspot, and that's what drew me there, the music and stuff. But yeah, man, I love Denver. So I know Denver's excited to have you for sure. This is a great place for music.
I know, and I feel like sometimes I'm just walking around, and it's there's a different inspiration. I love mountain biking.
Yeah.
Can't wait for snowboarding. You know. Yeah,
man.
Just living it. Yeah.
If you ever need like trails or stuff, like I also like to mountain bike, and
totally.
I also
I'm always down. My hands, do your hands get absolutely insanely sore?
I wear gloves.
Yeah, no, totally. But like
for sure.
I haven't done downhill for years, and I just went to Trestle like every week for multiple hours, and I was just like, I'd just been on computers and doing all sort of shit, and I just was like, they were getting more and more sore every week, and I was like, what's going on? And now it's like, it takes like weeks for them to go down, and I'm like, all right, I've got to keep doing it. And then
it's been a while since I've gone out. I need to get back into it.
on computers most of the time.
Same. Yeah, you're using your wrist, and then you're just like grinding your wrist.
It's like the most insane.
Yeah, it's a good workout.
Yeah.
But it's kind of nice because like you have to focus in that moment on only not dying. Because like
I try not to think about anything at all. I actually think about like music and shit. I'm like off somewhere else completely, and it's really meditative by the time I get to the bottom.
Really?
Yeah, I feel like I'm just stoked, and I'm kind of at peace by the time I'm at the bottom, even though it's fucking intense.
I'm usually just like, don't die the whole time.
I feel like I think that relates to like life performance. If you think about what can go wrong, you're probably going to do something wrong. Yeah, you know, I feel like
some truth to that.
I don't think like that at all. I try not to.
Well, I mean, you should enjoy it.
Yeah, sometimes it's not enjoyable. You're freaking out, but it's like it's enjoyable by the time you get to the bottom. Yeah.
I went to Winter Park last year. That was a really fun downhill.
Yeah, that's at Trestle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, for me to come from somewhere where, you know, there's gondolas that take you up to the top of the mountain bike park.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's beautiful up there too. The drive alone is worth it.
Totally.
Cool, man. I think those were all the questions we had. And like, thanks again for joining the podcast. It's been awesome meeting you. I've been listening to your music for a while. Everybody out there listening, go stream all of Opiuo's music. Yeah, man. Seemed like really down to earth, great guy. And looking forward to seeing all the new things.
Yeah.
I do have one thing that I am trying. You're the second person I've done this with. So I built an AI chatbot with the help of another guy, trained on all the podcast episodes and trained on Ableton Live. And I'm going to have you ask it a question. So you can ask
it a question.
You can ask this Ableton bot. His name's Abe. So Abe, the Ableton bot. And if you had to ask him any question, it could be as nerdy or as specific as you possibly want. And it could be about music production. It could be about Ableton specifically. It could be about the podcast.
I've wondered, talking about loudness, like, is there actually truly a limit to loudness? Like, is there ever going to be a new technology that's going to get louder? I don't know if that's...
Is there a true limit to loudness inside the DAW? Or
yeah, I guess so. I mean...
Maybe say, like, what is the maximum loudness possible? Let's see what that says. In digital audio workstations, there isn't a strict maximum quote-unquote loud limit.
Yeah, I mean...
The same way that...
I'm more meaning, like, I know that there is technically now, but I wonder if there's, like, is there ever going to be a technology where it can be perceived louder?
Asking futuristic questions. I don't know if it's trained.
Okay, right. We should rephrase it. Do you want to start that question again? You can introduce it and I can give you another one.
These are all existential.
You're like, ask me a question. I'm like, fuck. Just go down that line.
No, it does talk about like digital clipping at 0 dB full scale and like loudness measurement and target levels and dynamic range and mastering final loudness. So it does give us something, but I don't think it's quite the answer.
You want to ask me again and we can... find a new one.
If you had to ask Abe a question, what should we say? Is there anything in Ableton Live that you don't know?
There's endless things I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I don't know them yet.
Right. You don't know it because you don't know.
It's almost like I find it very intuitive that I just have an idea and I can. That's why I really enjoy, when I switched from Logic to this, I really enjoyed that it just would be like trying something. There's a way you can sort of figure it out.
Yeah. Maybe this is a good time to thank Magic Mind for hooking us up with some of these delicious shots. I'm a huge fan. Frequent said it tastes like organic shampoo. I think it tastes better than that, personally. But give it a good shake. It needs a good shake.
Oh, it tastes amazing.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Oh, I see the organic shampoo.
Yeah, you can taste it.
But it doesn't taste like shampoo.
Not really. I like it. It honestly makes me feel good.
Tastes like a lunch on the ocean.
Yeah.
Next to the ocean, looking at the ocean.
Yeah. It's like you're on a beach. There's a nice breeze. Yeah, I like it. It definitely helps me like stay awake without making me feel anxious.
Cool.
Like if you chug like the Celsius or Red Bull and stuff, you get like all tweaky. I
don't drink that stuff.
Yeah, I can't either.
No.
I can't do that anymore. I feel like I'm getting to that age where it affects me more.
I had a night. I was on tour. I'll never forget it. This is when I had my last Red Bull. Was on tour with Marty Party and Freak Nasty in 2011. Did a sound check, had a Red Bull, went back to the hotel to have a sleep, forgot to have dinner, woke up. I think I did the show, got back to the hotel, and threw up for like 4 hours.
Oh.
Yeah, it was just Red Bull in my stomach. And Darren Freak Nasty came and looked after me. And it was the same day that the Japanese tsunami happened because I was sitting in bed watching that as I was throwing up. Dude, I'll never forget. That was my last Red Bull.
That's a rough day. That's what I call a hard day.
It was a fucking rough day.
That's wild.
I mean, that was so insane watching that. It was.
How high was it? Like the tsunami? Like
the one that absolutely
just crushed. I mean, how far away was it from you if you could see it? Like,
no, on TV.
Oh,
yeah.
I thought you meant you.
No, fuck
like,
no.
What?
No. Oh my God. No.
I was like, that is a bad day, dude. Like,
no, it was like, I was feeling so rough. And then that was happening in real time. It was horrific.
Yeah.
So full on.
That's really unfortunate, man.
But yeah, that's how I never forget my last Red Bull.
That would be a good last one. Like that's an indicator where
I've
you're
had like a sip every now and then when I've just like needed like just to have some sort of energy. It's funny. I think maybe it would work for a lot of people. It probably does.
A lot of people in America love artificial flavors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Anyway, man, dude, thanks again for hanging on the podcast.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it's a good time.
I appreciate it.
Bye, everybody. Stay tuned. We'll see you the next episode.
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. do me a huge favor if you would and hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you're listening to the podcast. If you don't hate the podcast, please leave a 5-star review. It would help me out a ton. Don't forget to check back on Tuesdays for new episodes. If you want to be the first to get new episodes and stay updated and get free new devices and sample packs and other stuff that I'll be sending out in the future, and check out the links in the show notes. Make sure to give this guest a follow on the socials, give them some love for spending their time. I want to give a huge shout out to Nicole at the Black Box Music Venue and her team in Denver, Colorado for hosting this special episode with Opiuo. Once again, if you're ever in Denver, go check out the Black Box. It's a great venue with an amazing sound system and people. It's a great community. So yeah, once again, thank you to them for hosting this episode in their studio. Thanks for listening to the podcast. I will see you next time.